Welcome to Author Interviews at Amazon. This morning I'm happy to sit down with Lou Beach, who is a longtime artist and illustrator, especially for the music industry, and he is the author of 420 Characters, a book of very short stories that was just released last week and is one of our best books of the month for December. Welcome, Lou. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you.
Let's start by talking about the origin of these stories. They started out as Facebook posts, as status updates back when there was a 420 character limit on those. So how and when did you realize that they might come together and be effective as a book?
Well, it was quite a while after I first got bored with status updates and made them into little fictions to amuse myself. But I would imagine about 6 months afterwards, I was getting really good feedback, and people were hungering for them. Maybe it's too strong, but you know, they liked them and they responded quite positively, and
lots of likes.
Lots of thumbs up and comments, and actually, there's quite a few people who felt the need to continue the stories. They would add on or embellish them, and a friend of mine decided that it would be a good idea for us to have a website of a book. And we designed a book. I found an old book in my old book collection that had this little emblem on it. And
with the actual 420 in?
no, it didn't have 420.
Okay.
I can't remember what it said. It was a book on undersea life. It's a lovely volume from the turn of the last century. And I just took it into Photoshop and made it into 420, and we decided to call it 420 Characters. And I enlisted the help of some celebrity friends to record some stories. At that point, as I was telling you before, it became, you know, calculated to see if we could garner enough interest to see if we could publish the book or have it published, and it worked. So my friends were, you know, good enough to let me ride their coattails to this, to me, an incredible success. I never expected this to happen. You know, the fact that somebody wanted to publish it was, you know, was enough. But to have so much attention given to it is truly amazing.
And it happened fairly quickly, you were saying.
It happened very quickly, yeah. As I said before, you know, I'm sort of chagrined because, you know, there are people who write for years without being published, who devoted their life to it. And to me, it started as a lark. I mean, I love writing and I want to continue it. It's a great second act. I'll be on Medicare in a few months, if it still exists. And so for me to now have this this second career is just astounding. It really is.
So each story in here was written individually, of course, and stands very much on its own, and there's a tonal similarity to them, your style as a writer, but there's no ongoing narrative in the book, it doesn't feel. Did you select which pieces would go in here and what order they'd go in, or did you have guidance from your publisher, from an editor on how to put it together?
I had a wonderful editor named Tom Bowman, and we went over which stories we thought would best appeal to readers. And he actually, I think, put them in some kind of order that, you know, there's a flow to it. So the Western ones would then go to maybe the criminal ones or the failed relationship ones, and then back to the Western ones. So they weren't clumped together. But there are some thematic tones that reoccur in the book.
I kept looking for glimpses of recurring characters and thinking I recognized somebody maybe, but I wasn't sure.
Well, online there are several characters. There's one named Ronnie, who's a ne'er-do-well, sort of a not a very good criminal, and a hapless office worker named Jerome. And for a while I was writing a serial called Lou and Gina. And they were a troubled couple who lived on the streets, and there's a murder involved. I might bring them back for a short story.
Would you write those sequentially, or did these characters would come up for you in you talked about writing these in kind of a dream awake state. Would they just come to you occasionally?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. They would haunt my dreams.
So you're saying you had great luck getting published, but short stories are a famously hard sell for publishers, and I think for the average reader as well. But do you think that's changing as a result of social media? Do you think that we are becoming more receptive to short literature as our attention spans get smaller?
That's possible. I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. You know, it seemed like statistics would have to come into play. But I certainly social media, Facebook and Twitter, allow people a space to practice, and that's what I did. I mean, this was an exercise for me. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I gravitated towards the visual arts. It just seemed easier. I'd rather play the piano than any of it, but I don't have the discipline or the ear.
Well, in addition to your writing, of course, you're still actively making art,
Oh, yeah.
including the beautiful illustrations for 420 characters. Is your creative process for writing and making visual art different, or are they similar?
Well, they come from the same need or compulsion or urge, whatever you might call it, to create a narrative. You know, the stories are obviously stories, and I hope that the best of the visual art also is a narrative. The little space that the picture inhabits, you know, has character and background and perhaps lighting. You know, there's little stage sets.
Well, I actually would be curious to hear your thoughts on the relationship between text and design, because the illustrations in here are very evocative, but they don't necessarily show what's happening in the story that they're next to. Did you create these illustrations especially for the book, or were they pieces you already had that you felt were a good fit tonally with the writing?
Right, exactly. They are not illustrations to any of the stories. They stand alone and hopefully elicit some kind of response in the viewer to create their own narrative. I don't explain the art. That's not my job, really. It's just to create it. The pieces existed before the book, but only one of them had been exhibited at the time of publication. So.
Okay. We interact with literature very differently now than we have in the past, and the advent of e-readers, we were talking about the fire a little earlier, has changed the tactile experience of the book as object. And in my interpretation, it seems like publishers are releasing more books like 420 characters that feel a little bit like a luxury item. And this is beautifully bound, it's beautifully printed, it's on heavy paper. Do you think that the experience of a book like yours can be duplicated on screen effectively?
Oh, no, not at all. And I really like my Kindle a lot. But no, this is a lovely stocking stuffer. No, it really is a lovely little volume, and I take great pleasure in the physicality of it. I have many books at home, and a great many of them are old volumes, and there's something about them that's very pleasing, you know.
Do you feel a difference between, when you say you have a Kindle, when you're reading on screen and reading on paper, is it a different experience for you? Or do you feel that the writing can affect you similarly either way?
Yeah, I think the writing affects me the same way. If it's good writing, it doesn't matter if it's on, you know, I read on the phone occasionally with the Kindle app that my wife will be in the market and I'll pick up what I was reading at home on the phone. I prefer a book, but I easily go to, you know, wonderful books that I have on the Kindle. And that, you know, maybe in another generation there won't be as many books and people will prefer the Kindle. I'm sure some prefer the Kindle now. I mean, it's very convenient.
I'm a paper person too.
Yeah, I love the paper.
So actually, I believe that you and your wife and your children are all artists, I understand. Have you ever collaborated with any of them? And would you consider, you know, moving away from fiction to write about what it's like to live in a household sort of full of creative temperaments? Has that ever occurred to you to do?
Well, we don't all live together anymore. My daughter's 30. In fact, today's her birthday. Happy birthday, hon. Alpha. She's married and she lives with a man who happens to be her husband. She's a wonderful artist, and my son, who'll be 23 in a couple of months, he's a wonderful artist as well. And we have shown together collectively as Gene Pool.
Oh,
we had an exhibit a few months ago in LA, and we could see our work online as well. My wife's a fabulous photographer, my personal media person. And the four of us have not shown together, but we certainly could, yeah. Our life, when the kids were younger, you know, making art was just my job, so they'd come into the studio and there's Dad, you know, cutting things up and using glue, and they would maybe sit in a corner and do their own.
Probably seemed like a pretty good deal.
It is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, is this a job for a grown-up, cutting out pictures and gluing them together?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you've made it one.
No,
That's wonderful.
It's quite wonderful. I'm very grateful.
And what were your favorite books growing up? Did they have a strong visual element to them?
Freddie the Pig.
Freddie the Pig. Tell me about Freddie the Pig. I don't know that one.
There's a series of stories. You know, I should look them up. There were a series of stories about you know, a character named Freddie Piggott. I think he was a detective. But, you know, Penrod, Call of the Wild, you know, normal kids' books.
And when you write now, do you think about those or think about those influences, or these stories are just coming from
No,
completely other place?
I can't see any connection to those. But I am, you know, I'm influenced definitely by authors that I read now. I don't try to emulate them, but I'm, you know, I think they urge me on to write better. You know, if I read a Pete Dexter story, or, you know, Robert Stone, I'm just amazed at the fluidity of the writing and the impact that it has on me emotionally. They just hit some buttons that astound me. That they're so good.
Well, thank you. That's it's been a pleasure talking with you. That's all the questions I have. But before we let you go, we'd love to have you read an excerpt from the book. So I think you've marked a few in there. If you could read them for us, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you very much, Mia. I appreciate your having me here.
We're glad to have you.
Here's one of my favorites. Do not crack the spine at home. Crawfoot stood outside of Sloane's, hand up for a cab. His face was punctuated by a cigar, and a redhead hung on his arm like a comma. He'd approached her after his third Dewar's and water. You make a bar stool look like a throne. She looked him over, suppressed a smile. Yeah? You make wearing a raincoat look like a felony. He lit her cigarette, loosened his tie, and sat down next to her, bumped her knee. No, I love them all, Mia, you know.
These are like children, as you say.
They're my children, exactly. In '98, Pasker and I subcontracted to paint a suspension bridge that spanned the Mpozo River in Congo. One day, while adjusting the compressor, we saw 30 or 40 paramilitary guys running our way with machetes and AK-47s. We were terrified, but as they got closer, they began to laugh, pointing at the spreading wet stain on the front of Pasker's pants, and ran past us. Once again, Pasker had saved our lives. A bird lives on my head, nests in my hair, pecks at my scalp. A finch, I believe. When I go out in public, I cover it with a hat so it's away from prying eyes and cats who would climb my body to catch it. Sometimes on the bus, I notice others wearing hats, and if there are seeds or an errant feather on their shoulders, I nod and smile and preen. When I finish off with this one that people quite like. The long cargo ship pulls itself across the ocean and comes to rest at the port. In the morning, it stands upright on its hind legs and with resolve heads toward the business district and settles into the middle of the block. It removes its raincoat and folds it, puts it on the roof of the community center, then opens its doors to share the wares that brave the waves. This is legend. This is IKEA.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.